Okay, explanations for forgetting. I'm sure we've all had cases in life where we forget things. Sometimes you think, oh, I'm just going to go upstairs and get something, and then you get upstairs and you've got no idea what you went up for in the first place. So let's look at some explanations for forgetting. So the first two is proactive interference and retroactive interference. So proactive interference occurs when older memories interfere with recalling new ones. So proactive is when you learn A, then you learn B, you try to remember B, but A interferes. Whereas retroactive happens when new information disrupts recall of previously learned information. So you learn A, then you learn B, you try to remember A, and B interferes. So you might, for example, learn German and then learning French disrupts the memory of German. So you'd use a French word when you want to say a German one. Or for proactive interference, a familiar piece of music distracts you from learning a new tune. So they're the two types of interference. Now, there are studies into this. For example, McGeoch and McDonald in 1931, they had 6 groups. You had to learn 10 adjectives perfectly. They then had to learn a new list that had a similar meaning, a synonym, or opposite meaning, an antonym. Or there were various controls such as nonsense syllables or a rest with no learning. And the results were that the performance depended on which second list they'd experienced and whether it interfered with the learning of the adjectives. So those in the rest condition did best because there was no interference, and those in the synonym condition performed poorly. So the similarity of the synonyms created greater interference, causing more forgetting. So moving on to retrieval failure. So the encoding specificity principle is basically a way of saying that however the memory is encoded, if the stimuli to access that memory is the same, you're more likely going to remember it. If it's a different sense that's used to try and access a memory, you're less likely going to remember it. So context-dependent forgetting is basically saying that the context where you learn something and the context where you want to retrieve something should be the same. So Badley and Godden and Badley in 1975 did a study with deep sea divers where they got the deep sea divers to learn a list of words underwater, and then they got tested underwater or on land. So, for example, if they learned the words underwater and got tested underwater, they performed better than if they learned underwater and got tested on land. If they learned on land and got tested on land, they'd perform better than if they learned on land and got tested underwater. Regarding state dependent, there's a couple of studies, one where participants got drunk, which is by Overton in 1972. So they learned material while drunk, and when they were sober, they found they couldn't remember. So you have to get in the same state again. So technically, you have to get drunk again to remember what you'd learned. In 1980, there's a Canadian study by H, who found a similar thing with marijuana. Now, marijuana, from the research I've done, is legal in Canada, which is probably why they got the approval for that one there. So a lot of these studies on memory are lab-based, so they lack mundane realism. They're not like real life memory, how we use it. However, it could make sense for students learning if they get tested in the same room where they're actually learning the material in the first place. So sometimes also the memory could be stored in the wrong place, which is why you can't access it, which is why you get retrieval failure. So the memory's still there, you just can't access it. So hopefully this helps you to understand the encoding specificity principle, context and state-dependent forgetting, and also proactive and retroactive interference. See you on the next video.